Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 2 of the Financial Success in Archeage series. In this video, we'll be discussing labor sinking, that being, what to do when you have a whole lot of labor points and not a lot of time. There's a saying, time is money, and Archeage likes to consume as much of your time as possible. Sometimes you just couldn't log into Archeage for a few days. Sometimes you had other things to do. You got a job, you got a family, or you just didn't feel like playing. Maybe you weren't in the mood, or you were on, but you didn't feel like farming. To pop a Balthazar, all of those are perfectly legitimate reasons. But you still want situations like this to happen.
We're in the money, we're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along.
And we do that by making as much money as possible with as little time and effort spent as possible. Or in Archeage terms, labor sinking. Now, if you need to get rid of labor points, you're looking to make safe investments with minimal time and effort. And there are many options, but not necessarily good ones. So, how do you tell the difference? First, let's touch on economics for anyone who might be new to the concept and need a little help understanding. For labor sinking, you're generally going to want to focus on crafting items that are in high demand or are used to make multiple things. Demand is higher for an item that has high utility, but supply in Archeage doesn't necessarily keep up all the time. This leads to price increases, which for you means profit. For example, let's say I can post 5 acorn beehives on the auction house, which is about 500 gold on my server, or I can craft 111 opaque polish, about 500 gold at present. If I split my polish into 20 stacks or so, it's more likely that most, if not all of them, will have sold by the time I log back into the game, whereas probably 1 to 3 beehives will have sold. Maybe I will have been undercut and none will have sold. This is because the polish is cheaper and thus available to more people, and as a crafting material, is wanted by more people to do different things. Obviously, I'm not saying never make beehives ever, but this brings up risk. The only constants in an economy are change and chaos, glory to Tzeentch and the ruinous powers. Prices rise and fall, sometimes with prediction and sometimes out of nowhere, so you should never keep all your eggs in one basket. If you only have 500 gold, it's much better to make a beehive and some polish and a few other things, so if any investment fails you, you're still well off. Crafting materials that are in high demand for many people are usually safer. And I emphasize usually, because there is no such thing as a guaranteed item to sell to make money, just ones that are very likely. Nothing is guaranteed in economics. Change for the changer of ways. Now that we've got that out of the way, the next step is to recognize what's a profit and what isn't. And the answer is subjective depending on your circumstances. Let's say logs are going for 3 silver each, and lumber is going for 10 silver each. If you bought logs and resold them as lumber, that'd be a waste of time because of the 10% auction house cut. Totally pointless. However, if you were going to use the lumber for something else that would turn a profit, instead of directly reselling it, let's say fine lumber is making some money on your server, or you're building a boat, then this swaps out the extra money that would be spent on lumber instead of logs for labor points. And if you're, say, only logging in for 30 seconds before going to work, buying logs and clicking craft all will take almost no time and effort and will absorb as much labor as you want. You can just come back later to make use of the lumber. If your labor was capping and going in a trash can, you may as well swap it out for a useful asset. Now on the other hand, let's say you're not making a boat and anything lumber would be used for isn't making money on your server. Plenty of other options. Fabric, stone, various types of ore, etc. In Archeage, most crafting materials can be made without leveling the trade skill, in contrast to, say, World of Warcraft. However, if you are someone who's struggling getting land, but is at the point where you do need regal crafting stations, here's an FYI. All the carpentry craftable regal stations are available for public use in each of the 4 starting zones in one of the guest houses. The Harani have the best zone for this, as their public regal stations are close to a smelter, stonemason workbench, sawmill, auctioneer, mailbox, and warehouse. If you're on the western faction, you're disadvantaged with public services in this regard, since there aren't any of those in close proximity. But if you're taking my advice, you'll have plenty of money to afford hereafter stones to portal all over the place, so it shouldn't be overly burdensome to you.
Now you're thinking with portals.
Something that's going to be essential is the ability to calculate if an item is profitable. I normally do this by seeing how much money I'd make if I spent 1,000 labor from a worker's compensation potion on crafting and selling the item in question. Here's how it works. Take the buyout or bid price you would post an item on the auction house at, and multiply that by 0.9. This will give you what's left after the auction house cut, if the item sells. Subtract the cost of the materials on the auction house from that number, and you have your profit from crafting the item. Next, check how much labor it would cost to produce. So let's say you're getting 10 silver in profit from a 15 labor craft. A worker's potion grants 1,000 labor, so 1,000 divided by 15, 15 being the labor cost. We're seeing how much we could make out of a labor potion. And we get 66 rounded down. So that's 66 crafts for a labor potion. So 66 times your profit, that's 66 times 10 silver, equals 6 gold and 60 silver. So if a labor potion costs more than 6 gold and 60 silver on your server, you should perhaps reconsider crafting the item, or at least not use a labor potion on it. You may be able to use it as a component for something else, but it's probably not wise to sell it as is. On the other hand, if it'd make more money than you'd spend if you bought a labor potion off the auction house, then congratulations, it's currently profitable. Now, the fewer items required to make something, the faster you can do this calculation. If you're just checking an ore smelt, then it's only the ore and ingots. If you're checking, say, seed oil from alchemy, it's the seed oil, charcoal stabilizer, corn, and rice. If you're not very good at math, it may take a little practice to get the process down, but after a few repetitions, you'll do the calculation in a matter of seconds, because it's the same formula every time. Generally speaking, when dumping labor, the most efficient thing to do will be to hop online, check the profitability of some items that you can craft in bulk, maybe for a profession you want to level, buy the materials, and click craft. Since the actual crafting of 100 seed oil is something you can be entirely AFK for, this is a very useful process if you're going to, say, take a shower, or go to work, or watch a show, since actual crafting can be done while away. After a little practice, you'll spend more time posting the auctions than deciding what to craft and buying the components. Now that we've got the process under wraps, another important note is that you should never assume a game's economy was intelligently designed, or that its denizens have any idea what they're doing. It's going to be very common to have something that's utterly pointless to craft, either from the ineptitude of the developers or the ineptitude of the players. For example, Iana's Passion is a potion requiring 5 gold in vendor-purchased materials. There's a better version of the potion currently valued at 2 gold apiece, complete waste. Gunpowder from masonry takes only 1 labor point to make, and depending on current prices, I'll get between 6 and 24 silver in profit, both of which vastly outshine the cost of buying a labor potion. Printing as a trade skill isn't worth buying a labor potion for, because all the sellable items, including paper and high-level scrolls, have labor costs that add up to under the profit one would need to buy a labor potion. Now, those examples are just from my server, so your results may vary, but now that you have the formula, you can find out. Also, if you're looking to use a labor sink to level a specific profession, generally the way you should look at it is, what items from this profession can I make that will make me money? That way, leveling the profession is merely a desired byproduct of you getting rich. Time is money. The game is giving you a leveled profession in addition to profit for your time and effort, because that's the way professions are set up, with most of the items craftable at level 1. You could produce and sell just one thing and level a profession all the way to max if it keeps selling if you wanted to. Now, of course, there are some exceptions. Say you're in a guild that really needs someone to level something quickly, but presumably they're going to do something to help you in return for the expenses you're incurring if it's going too fast to make money. And if they're not, well, I'd question how much they deserve your loyalty and charity. One does not display one's finest emerald amid squalor. Moving on, let's talk briefly about the 2 most popularly advocated labor sinks, tax certs and coin purses. While yes, they're better than letting the labor cap out and be wasted, anything that doesn't cost you is better than nothing. That's not a bragging right. If you do own land, or plan to in a reasonable span of time, going to a random scarecrow and crafting tax certs will save you some money, but that should only be a last resort, because that's not making you money, it's just reducing an expense. Like you're a foreign aid worker logging in on a shoddy connection to craft tax certs and pay for your house because you have too much stuff to do and aren't going to return to your country of origin for another couple weeks, and you're trying to keep Archeage from demolishing your house. That kind of situation, or one with similar login constraints. I also see people who save their coin purses for when their labor is capping. I wouldn't normally recommend this to someone who's new, since the contents of those coin purses might help a poor new player fund the assembly of, say, a trade pack, and if you watched my labor generation video, it should be within one's means to do so. Sure, save your coin purses if you've got another use for the labor, like planting and harvesting an illegal farm or some such, but money that is sitting in your coin purse doing nothing is money not working to get you more money. Both these labor sinks have circumstances in which they're useful or preferable, but I see them recommended way too often. Whenever I hear someone ask for labor sink advice, it's usually either of those that I see recommended. You could plant an illegal tree farm somewhere as something of a labor sink, but that comes with all the associated risks. In my case, I don't farm, because I ain't got time for bullshit. The point of a labor sink, in my opinion, is to make a lot of money with small amounts of time spent. When labor sinking, we don't farm our rice, we buy it, unless we're too poor, but that's a temporary state of affairs. The way to make a lot of money with minimal time and effort and really sink labor is to find something that you can craft a lot of conveniently and easily and will sell for a good profit. Maybe you're leveling alchemy and can now make a Tahuda's bubble, only 3 components. One is also alchemy made and has 2 components. Maybe you're selling ammunition and weaponsmithing. Maybe selling regrade scrolls and printing, or perhaps the blank scrolls. Maybe that's more profitable on your server than it is mine. Maybe fine leather if you're a leather worker. Maybe some ore smelts. What if you're leveling farming? How's eco-friendly fuel looking on your server? What about machining? How are those cartwheels looking nowadays? There are so many opportunities to craft a lot of items, use a lot of labor, and make a lot of money for under 10 or even under 5 minutes of effort in the changing sea of Archeage economics, that everything can go just as planned. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions about the guide, feel free to ask in the comments section below. Be sure to check out part 1 on labor generation if you haven't seen it already. Make sure those in need see the video, and stick around for part 3. I'll see you next time. Later, YouTube.